So one of the topics going around right now is the whole Steve Wilks to the booth, Steve Wilks out of the booth, should I say? Um, this one I think is kind of it's making a mountain out of a molehill. I don't necessarily see a huge difference if he's comfortable being upstairs and forcing him to be downstairs. Is that really going to fix the reason why they can't tackle in short yardage or they can't stop the run? Is that the difference? I don't really think so. But I want to play you a clip because this is your guy Tim Ryan, T-Rock.
T-Rock in the house. I like T-Rock.
Let me play real quick. Just tell me what you think about his
What's he saying?
ideas.
I would not mind, and again, I don't know if it'll be his decision or Kyle's, or I would not mind seeing the coordinator on the sideline. And the only reason I say that is I know that the coordinators do a good job from the box. Dan Quinn comes to mind right away in Dallas. But this defense, I mean, just go back to the Minnesota game and some of the things they were trying to do different and weren't working from a defensive structure standpoint in terms of some of the coverage. When the coordinator's not on the field, he may – and again, this is just hypothetical. Hey, he's sitting down there with Johnny Holland, his linebacker coach. Johnny, this isn't working, right? The adjustments on the grease board, if you will, on the sideline in between series.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't working, man. We got to try something else. I'm telling you, every time we line up in this, they're slow delaying, running the hook to this spot. They're running whatever. Fred gets all that. These guys have played it. This is a veteran enough defense that's played in a lot of big games and won a lot of big games. Well, when Saleh and D'Amico are down on the sidelines, they're going to come up and say, what's going on? And not only can they hear your thought process and your opinion, but they can also feel it. They can sense the urgency of it. I think that just being able to have something tangible that he can touch down on the field and be like, okay, maybe that'll help, because I think sitting up in the box, and that's his perspective, and that's what he's always done, there's a disconnect between the players and the coordinator in terms of the liaison, if you will, and the guy that's relaying the message. Steve, you got me. This is Johnny. Check Johnny Holliday, man. They think we need to run a little more cover 5. What do you think? That sounds and I don't know. I'm just hypothetically speaking, but being down on the field and having that eye-to-eye, field-to-field, touch-to-touch coordination with these players, I think that changeup could possibly be an asset for this defense.
So that's basically what he's saying.
Yeah.
What are your takes on that?
Well, Steve Wilks is not the first coordinator to coach from the booth. You know, a lot of people wanted Vic Fangio in the offseason. Vic Fangio coaches from the booth. You know, he mentioned the guy from Dallas, Dan Quinn. He coaches from the booth. You know, I would say this. It's like these guys are like doctors, and they have to, you know, assess what they see. So I would say Steve or any defensive coordinator should coach from where, or should, you know, direct the defense from where they're comfortable. So if he's more comfortable in the box as opposed to on the sideline, then he should be up in the box. The last thing I want to do is start dictating to people what their perspective is, what their vantage point is. You know, they have to assess correctly what's going on the field. And if he feels like his best assessment is a bird's eye view, then I think they ought to just go with it. If they don't want him to have a bird's eye view and that's where he feels comfortable, then they ought to replace him. I really believe that. I definitely don't think they should dictate to him, Steve, come onto the sidelines. Because what if he doesn't see it the same way on the sidelines? Then you're really flying blind. Then you're asking a guy, hey, I want you to assess our defensive problems, and I want you to watch it from the perspective that I want you to watch it from, not the perspective that you choose to watch it from. Do you see what I'm saying? So whatever makes Steve comfortable is, I think, what Steve ought to do.
Yeah.
If he's comfortable up in the booth, stay up in the booth. That's what I would say.
I heard Haberman and Middlecoff talking about this, and Haberman's point was that in college, when an offensive coordinator isn't performing well, they move him up to the booth, And when a defensive coordinator isn't performing well, they move him down to the field. And that's just how they do it in college. Now, it's the NFL, and, Steve Wilks is he's not some just college guy that's coaching bad. He's an NFL coach, and he's also a DB. That's the other thing. It was like Saleh and D'Amico. I mean, Saleh didn't play, but Saleh looked like a linebacker, and he acted like a linebacker. D'Amico played linebacker. So, like, they felt way more comfortable being down on the field, like headbutting guys and going crazy on the sidelines. If that's not who Steve Wilks is, I don't see any point in forcing him to be that guy. Like, when they cut to him, he's like down in his computer, like taking notes, like figuring out plays. He's not like yelling on the sideline. So if that's not who he is, that's not how he's going to coach. I don't think that would necessarily make anything better. If he needs to improve his play calls, he needs to improve his play calls. It has nothing to do with whether he can scream at guys on the sideline or not. And that's just my opinion. Tim Ryan obviously played football too, so
right.
he has an idea of how it feels too. So maybe, I don't really know, but to me, it doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal.
Well, I mean, it's just, it's your personal preference. But I mean, if there is some kind of communication breakdown, that's kind of a big deal. But I'd like to know more about why there's a communication breakdown instead of, it's not like Steve Wilks is the first guy to ever coach, to direct a defense from the booth. Vic Fangio does it. I mean, he does a good job at it. I mean, it's not like he's the first guy to ever do it. So I'd like to know a little bit more about where's this communication disconnect and see if we can solve that. Ultimately, you do have to get your point across. And if the players aren't, it might be something where the players are used to getting instruction on the sideline and they feel out of the loop because Steve's talking to Fred Warner and, just the guy with the green dot. Maybe the players feel the need. I mean, there should be a little dialogue here between the veteran defensive players and, Shanahan, or veteran defensive players and Shanahan and Wilks. I did find it interesting that Shanahan said, Steve and I will talk about that this week one-on-one.
In private.
That was kind of odd because it was like, well, wait a second. Why are you going to talk about it if you don't think it's a problem? It's almost like you're acknowledging that you think that it is an issue. So I'm eager to see. I mean, let's just say this, whatever they adjustments they want to make, I'd make them right now. Why? Because you got a bye week. You got Jacksonville coming out of it. You got, a sandwich of Seattle games around Philly coming up very shortly. And you want to get right. You got to get right. I mean, the one thing that we have to see is we have to see the 49ers in the playoffs. If the 49ers don't go to the playoffs, the heat on this regime is going to be dialed up big time. So they got to go to the playoffs.
Yeah.
As far as people will say, oh, is it Super Bowl or bust? Well, I don't know if it's Super Bowl or bust, but it's playoffs or bust. Right? I mean, would you at least agree
if they don't
with
make
that?
the playoffs,
If
it's a huge
this
failure.
team doesn't make the playoffs, there's going to be a lot of hand-wringing. There's going to be a lot of criticism from the media, from the fans, probably directly from the ownership as well. So, they better get whatever tinkering they want to do with the lineup, with the coordinator, with whatever, where he coaches from, what his perspective is. Better get to it. You better freaking decide here in the next couple of days what you want to do. You got a bye week to make some big decisions, and we'll get into that next. But
I think it's really interesting. I think it's really interesting. Kyle is not holding back. He's not protecting Steve Wilks in any way in all these press conferences. He's either being brutally honest or he is actually really upset and I guess that would be brutally honest too. But he's just being brutally honest. When they're asking him about Wilks, it's like, oh yeah, he messed up on that halftime call. Like he messed up on this play. Like we're gonna talk about it. Like he's not holding anything back from the media in terms of ridiculing anything that Wilks has done.
And I like what he said too about his team. And they asked him about his team. Your team's lost 3 in a row. What do you see? I watched the film. My team looks tired and slow. All right. Well, the bye week is going to cure some of the tired. What speed are you going to put on the field to make your team less slow? I mean, you're not just all of a sudden going to be faster. That means you're going to have lineup changes. So how do they get faster? I would say one way they get faster is putting Womack or Luter on the field and sitting Oliver. Womack's faster than Oliver for sure. Another way to get faster, I think, is put J.P. Mason at running back and put, use CMC flexed out a little bit more. Then you can get more of your playmakers on the field that way. But, I mean, those were the two comments from Shanahan. My team looks tired and they look slow. Well, the bye week should freshen them up a little bit, but where's the speed coming from? That'd be my question.
I feel like I'm usually the guy that would say when someone says fire this coach, I'd usually say no, hold off. But if Wilks has another bad week, if this passing defense has a bad week, Wilks is a secondary coach. He came in to focus on the secondary, and the secondary is playing terrible. If they have another week of the secondary playing terrible, I think it's time the finger pointing is just going to get worse. And I think Steve Wilks is going to be on like the hot seat or whatever.
Will they fire Wilks in season?
I don't know if they're going to fire him in season because that's like a whole nother issue. And who steps up? Is it Kocurek? I mean, that wouldn't be terrible. He's obviously he doesn't want to do that. I don't know what would happen. But the other thing is they had the opportunity to promote from within and they didn't. So that kind of tells you all you need to know about what they think about the room. Not that they think negatively about the room, but they didn't promote anyone from within their organization to be that defensive coordinator. So it's not an easy. It wouldn't be an easy passing of the torch.
Yeah. No, I mean, and here's the other thing with D'Amico and with Saleh, they went in house. This is the first time they went outside the organization, and it doesn't look like it's working. We'll see. The thing that bothers me, and I expressed this to Willard today on the radio, Steve Wilks has moved around a ton.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it when I really looked into it. Steve Wilks has been, he worked for a Johnson C. Smith College, Savannah State, Illinois State, Appalachian State, Eastern Tennessee State, Bowling Green, then Notre Dame, University of Washington, then the NFL with the Chicago Bears, LA Chargers, Panthers, Cardinals, Browns. Then he went to Missouri. Then he went to Carolina. Now he's in San Francisco. I mean, that's a lot of moving. I mean, we're talking about 16 different stops with even more jobs than that. So it's like the guy's had almost a different job every year, but he's had 16 different stops since 1996.
Yeah, I mean, those college ones, I'd say that's almost like a testament of him moving up the ranks. He wasn't given a top job from the beginning. Because what some of those colleges I don't even know. Like what?
Yeah.
Southern
okay.
What?
So maybe that's a little bit of an ascension.
He's obviously he comes across, at least to me,
it's a lot of moving though. If you're really freaking good, doesn't somebody say, "Hey, we'll offer you more money to stay"?
Yeah.
It always makes me wonder. I don't care if you're talking about football coaches, if you're talking about, I don't care what profession you're talking about. You show me a resume of somebody that goes back. It's 2023. We're talking about 1996, so 27 years. In 27 years, you've worked for 16 different organizations. That's a lot of moving, man. That's a lot.
I mean, I'm not in that room. I'm not in that room, but to me, Wilks seems like a real.
It could be nothing,
guy.
But it could be something. That's all.
He seems smart. I'm not in the room with him, so I don't really know what his play call. He seems like a really smart, intelligent coach, but it's the Niners' defense is held to a very high standard, and it's really easy to get the finger pointed at you when the only difference from this year to last year in terms of talent on the team is you. The only difference is Wilks.
No, that's not true.
There's some, but the defense is significantly
look at
worse.
last year. Look at what they had last year. They had Jimmy Ward. They don't have Jimmy Ward. They had Tart. They had Emmanuel Mosley. They don't have those guys. They had Azeez Al-Shaair. They don't have him. They had Samson Ebukam. They don't have him. I mean, they changed out Charles Omenihu, Jordan Willis.
Yeah, but
they replaced out a bunch of guys.
They're replacing him with Randy Gregory and Chase Young.
Now, but I mean, we're those guys going forward. We're talking about what they've done thus far. Yeah, I mean, they added Hargrave, but Hargrave's not great against
I'll
the
give
run.
you the secondary.
They lost some really good run defenders and they didn't replace him. I think that's part of the. If you say what's the major reason why they're not as good against the run this year as they were last year, what I just said, the personnel. Every single one of those guys was good against the run.
Yeah, Jimmy Ward, obviously that one hurt. That one hurt because he was a hard hitting nickel corner last year that played a huge role in the defense, and they don't have him anymore. And they have Isaiah Oliver, who was was kind of like a cheaper version of him, but not really has the same speed, not as quick, and he's getting burned.